Yep, that's a spider egg woman thingy. Trek to Yomi comes out soon on PC, consoles, and Xbox Game Pass. This is a 2D samurai hack and slash telling the story of revenge, redemption, and roving warriors. If Ghost of Tsushima, Limbo, and old black and white movies got smashed together, you might get something a little close to this from Flying Wild Hog Games. Let's see if it's worth checking out. Another thing that's worth checking out is the Discord and the Patreon. As you guys know, when a dev gives me a code, I still get the game myself and give it away to one of the watchers or one of the subscribers. And if that doesn't make you subscribe, I don't know what will. So just scooch aside for the next person and I can give it to them. Let's do this. Presentation. If there is a testament towards design and artistic aim being more important, well, this isn't the only game that does it, but it's certainly now joined that company. Trek to Yomi is at all times an outstanding looking game. Even at its worst, it's achieved spots where other games' bests don't reach it. From the moments where cutscenes slip into the fray and you momentarily think that they are actually filmed footage, to the use of shadow blocking, thematic camera angling, and movement, all as well as consistent changes in activities. And they aren't huge activities. Sometimes it's just pushing a tree down over a ravine. But there's something about it that connects you, and the twisting and turning ways in which the levels are made continually impress you. While playing Trek, it brought back a desaturated 2.5D memory of a game that is a favorite in my pastime, Pandemonium. That twist and turning and unique way that the cameras work in conjunction with the movement on titles like this, mimicking both camera angles that are actually physically possible as well as impossible camera angles and the way movie directors can use those. It's a phenomenal piece of work, and that's before you roll up on a dude that looks like Skeletor and has the world's largest hate boner for revenge-seeking young men. Because while the game can appear one note, it's not. It's not all just about ancient samurai cities and fortresses. As you progress through the game, it starts changing, slowly altering until Limbo comes into mind. And then you enter what can only be described as Resident Evil if that game happened during Ghost of Tsushima's time frame. Performance is also excellent here, probably what you expect. There were a couple stutters here and there during loading screens and popping right out of them. The game doesn't have a huge number of graphical options to set it, but you probably won't actually need those. This is a title that is about the art design versus throwing a bunch of characters on screen and seeing what can actually happen. Animations throughout most of the game do connect you to the locations as well, or to the enemies. Now, you will see a couple glitches here and there, especially if you're doing finishers on some of the enemies. There are times where the enemies are in the foreground or in the background, and they come into the 2D realm to fight you. If you kill them a little bit early, sometimes you'll pull off a finisher where they're not there. That being said, artistic design, styling, a lot can be said with that. And this is one of the best looking games of this year. But is it one of the best sounding games of this year?
生きておろうが死んでおろうが拙者は上川村にたどり着かねばならぬ。
Let's talk about the audio presentation. First of all, the music itself, excellent. Native instruments all over the place. It goes bold when it needs to with some bigger pieces and some of the scarier parts when the protagonist is exploring lands best left forgotten. It also fades away during those times, but for just a hush and a bit of a random stinger here or there as you explore some dark cave or cross some ravine that probably should not be crossed. It does what it's supposed to, and it makes the music feel rightfully in its place, reflecting the havoc and the discord you see in the story whenever that shows up, but also letting those moments of nature come forth, especially when you're moving through a forest, you're crossing those old bridges, or you're just tracking through fields, and that resonates up around you with some of these musical pieces. Most of them sedate, but when it jumps into battle, you do get the traditional battle music that you would expect. Very good. Voice. Yeah, I mean, it probably is great. I admit it's in Japanese, and when I switched it away to try to see if I could get some dubs, they didn't show up. Since I don't understand Japanese at all, well, you be the judge. When people are angry, they sound angry. When they're happy, they sounded happy. It worked for me. I would have liked to have been able to parse this across from English, especially as the subtitles sort of ruin the overall look of the aesthetic I noticed. Something that actually did sort of break me away from the game. I know you have some traditionalists who are like, it needs to be in this native tongue, that kind of thing, which I absolutely get. It just doesn't really work for me like it does for a lot of other people. So traditionalists who like that kind of stuff are going to be incredibly happy. Those people who want their option, because remember, options are fine, they don't harm you, sadly don't have an option here. That could have been a bug, or it could have just been something that they didn't have the money for. Let's talk about the audio samples themselves, the gameplay sounds as you explore these worlds. Having played a couple games recently, and you know what I'm talking about, go check out my other reviews, by the way, that didn't do environmental audio very well. Working the sounds into the environment, making them feel a part of everything together, whether by mixing them differently or not at all. Trek to Yomi does exactly the opposite. First off, there's this village. Well, I won't say exactly what we call it or what it is, let's just leave it at that, but it is filled with some sad sack people lamenting what's happening, and I adore that the audio director just said, let's go for it. They cranked it up a couple times, and I thought to myself, you know what, my neighbors are going to think I am torturing somebody. Insanely well done, builds that tension straight to 11. Really great audio all across the board. I loved that mixing together of everything, and it was just nuts to hear them sort of say, let's just do this and let's put it out there, because that is something that a lot of times you actually will notice is sort of toned down in games. Now, there will be a couple times where you're playing, especially in the audio sampling, the voice sampling, where maybe somebody will sit there and just scream or yell or cry very, very loudly, and that can actually raise your hackles a little bit. It can sort of raise that tension. That's what it's supposed to do. So if it is slightly annoying, guess what? That's actually doing its job. Does the game do its job, though? That's when we talk about gameplay. The story opens up with a child learning kenjutsu at a dojo with his sensei. He's learning the basics, the ins, the outs, the sword fighting styles, blocking, parrying, some basic attacks, with parry and block being the bumpers, and attack being a mix of the face buttons as well as a quick dodge on a controller. Right about then, the bandits think attacking would be a great idea. Your master runs off to save the day, telling you to stay behind, so you promptly chase him straight down. And while learning to whittle away enemies with this 5-foot curved piece of sharpened steel, you see some damage being done around you. You have one last moment where your sensei defends you, dying in your place, which opens up the rest of the story as you age and become better at the sword and begin to hunt down your enemies. But that's not all that happens, but that is actually all I'm going to tell you, because the rest would be a spoiler. Not everything is as it appears, and that's the great part, because it lets you soak in this world. It's delivered on a 2D plane with more depth than you expect, and an artistry that a lot of 3D games just would probably strive for. It's not just the camera, though, and their sweeps and the attention to detail of exploring, which does work you through these twisting shortcuts in a black and white Dark Souls style crisp-cut level design. But it's the side storytelling that you see here. It's the moments that you actually experience as you're running through this game world, those cries for help, the panic, and that growing tension within yourself that nothing seems exactly as it should be. The game is seriously incredible in its storytelling, even if a lot of that isn't actually done, voiced, or acted in a cutscene somewhere. And that's good, because you may have noticed I'm just now getting to the fighting, and that's because this game does have a fighting system in it. It's just not amazing. You got your blocks, your combos, your switches, dodges, bows, throwing blades. What it doesn't have, though, is just a super nice, fluid fighting system. It's passable, but it never feels really amazing, which isn't bad, because while you do fight a lot of enemies, this game is not about rampaging through packs or roving Ronin on your way to redemption, though at first it may seem like that. It is about telling a story. Whether on hard or easy or medium, you won't stand up very long under a lot of these attacks. So it's more of an old style game in that way, with a lot of the enemies you face once you kill them sort of understanding exactly how to use their item or picking up that weapon. So for example, you'll face off against somebody with a bow, and once you take them down, you'll pick up that bow, and now you have that ability. But honestly, the distance, the camera angles that so elevate the practical layers of the design itself separate the characters from each other. A little bit difficult to sort of see what a character's doing. First, sometimes the game is actually just downright hard to see because they are so tiny in battles. Other times it's what's happening on the screen. Other times it's an effect that they're using to tell a story. Does it get in its way because the actual fighting system that is here is somewhat middle level deep, I would say, and it isn't something we're going to be stringing off a ton of combos for hours, and that actually helps it. If it was deeper, I would say this is much more of an issue. It's not terrible, it's just not exactly as swift or reactionary as I would like it. In a way, I do think that that shines a light on some of the ideas that they had for this game. It's not about the combat by itself. It's about learning the world, relearning what you learned because what you learned may be wrong, and following that story through tell its end, or the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning. Unique doesn't always mean fun. It's very fun. It's not like I expected. There's better action playing 2D and 2.5D games out there for sure. But the impression here is that while you're playing, the atmosphere, sometimes the creature, character designs, the shortcuts, the environmental storytelling, they're just so damned fun to see. It's not an incredibly long game, but there's some things there that are going to sort of extend it. It's going to have its detractors, and that makes sense. The game's entering this crowded field of 2D platformer and exploration games that do have more crisp controls or something like that. But few games can make you feel like you're exploring a film like this game is. It's like every shortcut is a new movie clip that's completely playable. And I really adored that feeling. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system. Well, this is on Game Pass as well. And even for full price, I would say this is worth it if you are looking at this game. Now, if you're looking at this game to in some place replace a Metroid kind of game or something with a ton of combat, think again. It is not that kind of game. Be very prepared for that. It is in many ways delivered, well, a little bit more like those ancient movies. There might only be a couple of encounters, but those encounters matter a lot, or they tell a bit of the story, or they extend it. There's more than a couple encounters in the game, that's for sure, but there aren't as many as you may be expecting in a Metroid-style game. So just be aware of that. Overall, what I got here was something that was just really unique, and we don't get unique as much as I think a lot of us like to think in the industry. Speaking of unique, I hope you find these reviews enjoyable. If you do, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. Spread the word, post it, put it on Facebook and MySpace. I would love for you guys to join the Patreon. I hope you guys find yourselves playing something awesome this week. Peace out. Thanks to the patrons who help this channel continue being what it is.